Asian family. We did also respond, and we did design some of our own experiments from the Abbasis to Umayyads rules to Ottomans and Seljuks. How did we interact with the other side, if there is another side of particularly European continent? And when this journey more or less concluded post 14th century, the new Enlightenment and Renaissance deeply impacted and had implications for one another. And there how we sort of settled and which provided the foundation of this modern world or current civilization, which is primarily led by the advancement of the Western materialist world, and no denying the fact that they have done some marvelous achievements on the account of material progress. But at the same time, all these progresses have generated multiple or many conflicts around the world, around the globe, which in my opinion primarily is related to its question of identity, but that identity is in a subtle way shaped up and translated more in economic and political terms and the governance structure, and that masquerading and designing of a new governance arrangement has given birth to new challenges, and those challenges are enunciated into the agreed narrative of the global communication framework. You hear about non-state actors, state actors, as if they are all gospel truth and have divine sanctions behind such narrative. But they are the settled communicating tools for the current day and time. When we reach post-Second World War, when the decolonization almost finalized, other than few more years post-Second World War, early 60s was almost done with the decolonization. A new interaction and engagement between these nation states, which had its roots in their respective empires, and those empires converged and morphed into these nation states. They gave shape recently to the Cold War, and then post 1990 on the collapse of Soviet Union and the socialist system. It was cleverly linked with the triumph of democracy and the triumph of capitalism, and an era of unilateralism led by United States along with the rest of the Western Hemisphere, for almost 2 decades. By the advent of millennium, I think so the realization of more of multilateralism grew, and that multilateralism and people started talking about, as we saw a new resurgent Russia, the rise of China, coming of India as a major economic power, forums later on like BRICS. So they all generated this new conversation and referral points about the multilateralism. Where do we fit in? Where do we fit in all of this saga? I think so we are a mid-sized country which has its own challenges deep-rooted in our history, in our own question of identity. Pakistan was craved out from a larger South Asian family on the basis of its identity as a faith-based group. A lot of time they craved out a new country for themselves. There were themes where people were for the creation of Pakistan amongst the Muslim, and there were people who were not that much for the creation of Pakistan amongst the Muslims. The people associated with the Congress or Ulama Deoband and so on and so forth. But then you see the intellectual, I would call him an emblem for a light for the people of South Asia in the form of Iqbal, Dr. Iqbal, along with the practical leadership of Qaeda-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who did advocate, and not just advocated, they made it realize and turned into a tangible reality, and we got this great country of Pakistan. Post creation, 70 years, we have some internal challenges which has cracked our national unity. Prior to 1970, we saw the bifurcation of this country into two major components, and later on the western part, which is today's Pakistan, did rise again to the occasion and has transformed itself into a viable economy, a viable state which has its own defense capabilities, not just capable security apparatus, but it transformed itself where the external aggression has almost gone to minimum due to our own strategic weapons and rest of the achievements which we did in the coming years. Pakistan's economic progress is one of an area which is still, I think so, needs more attention, and it needs where it could be realized according to its potential. A country of 250 million people almost, with a huge population under 30, almost 65%. That energy needs to be channelized, that energy needs to be tapped and translated economically, which I still feel is underinvested. We have underinvested in our human resource, we have underinvested in our skill development and other areas. But when I'm saying underinvested, it does not mean that it is utmost poor. It still has done a wave of industrialization. It still has a huge population who can speak English language, which provides a supply chain to the global service market, responding to the domestic needs, and a very important diaspora around the Western Hemisphere, GCC countries, and other areas. So there is a sizable section of the population which is economically contributing and making this state viable. It is not that bad a story. When I'm saying underinvested, by that I means that we can do more. A country full of natural resources, a country filled with its water resources, a country filled with its land resource. So these are the areas which can be translated, and it could be brought in as a huge economic success story. I think so we are on that path. We are directing our nation and society towards that ultimate destiny, and I'm sure it will take some time. It's challenging, but we will reach there. Along with that, we do reside in an environment where these new emerging security challenges, which some of them are directly related to Pakistan and some of them are indirectly related to Pakistan. Creation of organization like Quad and Quad Plus. The prime target probably of Indo-Pacific strategy is not Pakistan in itself, but the rising China, or the so-called containment of China, and Pakistan being viewed as a strategic ally with that has its own implications for us. It does have challenges for us, and it has opportunities for our arch rival on the eastern side, India. India is, in my opinion, flirting with the Western Hemisphere, offering itself to be the lead player with its, of course, huge population base, who can play a lead role to contain Chinese rise. When this so-called containment policy initiated probably somewhere in the mid-90s or early 90s, Chinese economy was 8th or 9th largest economy of the world. And by the time this containment policy got its shape and got its framework, be it in shape of AUKUS or other Quad Plus, whatever the frameworks are, they have reached second largest economy of the world. So the journey of that rising is continuing. And to thwart that is not happening. And probably it's just around the corner when the dragon would be the first largest economy of the world. And as I see it, that this so-called competition is not strategic, it's more or less economic. And if it is pure in nature and economic competition, then that competition is being turned into a triumph or on a winnable option by the other side. So what are the options? To turn it into a strategic competition, to turn it into a hot pursuit option or competition? I guess the answer is no. The answer is no for the global peace and stability. And there is no incentive in this conflict for the countries like ourselves. Pakistan do not incentivize conflict. On the other hand, we feel that in region, the players like India, they do incentivize this conflict, and they want to encourage the conflict because that's where they would benefit from attracting the technological transfer, the investment part, and other engagement with the Western Hemisphere. If there is no strategic competition between these two great powers in terms of United States and China, why there would be a preferential treatment with Indian Union? People would quote that they have got huge population anyway. Well, Africans have a huge population as well. There is around 1.4 billion people residing on African continent. So it's not just India which has this potential of demographic advantage. There are other regions and areas. We in ECO region, we are around 500 million people too. And the era is of connectivity, the talk is of corridors and bringing all the regions together. American continent on its own has got a huge potential and demography as well, from Latin to South America, from South to the rest of the American continent, North America. So they have got a region of their own. Until and unless we do not see that the kind of challenges which are emerging and offering itself to the current, if we take the framework of nation states, that these are the challenges which cannot be taken on their own either by one single power or even group of power. Let's say climate change. Can climate change be tackled or addressed on its own by United States of America, or by European Union, or by India in itself, or by China, or by the rest of the Asian countries, or by South Americans? Of course not. Climate change is becoming an existential threat, even sometime more than the military challenge. I mean, we have recently experienced this in the floods of Pakistan last year, that it brings more devastation than some small conflicts, or even people or scientists are anticipating they can bring more devastation than major conflicts. So what do? How do you respond to these challenges of climate change? Then there are economies which are contributing to their domestic economies on the basis or on the areas which are responsible for bringing this climate change disaster. How do you morph those economies where the mitigation can be addressed, and at the same time this transformation of those economies is morphed into green economies? So the answer remains that there has to be some global coordination and cooperation on this account, at least. Major conflicts around the world, be it on the European continent or other continent, we are now realizing that if we become selective and we choose double standard on the definition of war ethos, when it is happening on European continent, we will view it differently, particularly in terms of Russo-Ukrainian war, or if it is recently happening in Middle East, what is the entire globe is experiencing one of the medieval, or even probably there is no parallel in the medieval world of such barbaric and horrific acts which are being committed by the State of Israel against the unarmed citizenry of Palestine. Well, what to talk of unarmed citizenry? There are vulnerable people in hospital. They're injured. Injured are being killed. Children are being eliminated. It's not of condemning one part or the other part. It is about those prime human values. How do you respond to killing of children? I've been challenged by a few of my Western diplomats here that, well, Israeli children have been also killed. Well, I wonder to that query that, fine, I accept this, that the killing of any children is condemnable, be it of any faith or origin. So how many Palestinian children have to be killed to appease and address that Israeli anger? 1, 5, 10, 500, 1,000, 4,700? Can they give us a number so we can satisfy those parents that, wait, some 10,000 children needed to be killed so that Israeli anger is addressed? This is unacceptable, utterly unacceptable. And the kind of narrative which is being trying to be generated is even more surreal and bizarre. So who would be defining those value system in terms of geographical context? If the conflict is on the European continent, the entire war definition, the international law perspective would be altogether different. I was going through an article in The Economist where they legally tries to rationalize the Israeli intervention in the Gaza Strip by giving pure legal jargons. And this was even a bigger shame. It is not at all about legality, and the entire legal structure of the world or the lawgivers, starting from divine to the parliament, has been that you have to provide a sense of justice. And the justice has to be felt and seen. The justice has to be, at least should have some semblance of objectivity. Nobody can rationalize the killing of 4,700 children. I've been saying this all along, that in human history, I've heard the killing of children on the advent of Moses' birth. The pharaohs ordered that all the children among the Bani Israel has to be killed, as he was feared that a child is going to be born and he will challenge the authority of Pharaoh. And then ironically, I see the killing of children by the same people who claim and adhere to the value of Moses and claim that they do believe in his prophethood. There has to be some soul searching. And there has to be some honest soul searching. When we've been asked or we've been suggested to condemn a group, well, the more or less reason that there should be a Palestinian state, they should be primarily responsible to take on any challenges if it is coming from a Palestinian population. If you do not have a viable state, non-state actors would be there on their own, and they will take on all those narrative, and they'll take and champion the cause of the people, and they would respond according to the best of their judgment, and which at times wouldn't be in the best interest of the region or the people living on either side. But if you do have a framework which you have for the rest of the world, and that is nation state, why deny these people the same framework on which the global order is surviving? Coming back to our own region, we do have a lot of opportunity to have connectivity from the Central Asia to West Asia to the Caucasus, and from here even there are opportunities to rest of the South Asia. But one of the prime area which is of main impediment is the issue of Kashmir. Kashmir is an area which deserves, which needs, which requires some serious attention. And that attention has to be, again, according to the people of Kashmir, not according to Pakistan or according to India. There are some living human beings who have their own aspirations for last 70 years, and there are in millions. And the Forum of United Nations has promised them through its resolutions that they would look into their aspirations, political aspirations, and would seek and ask them that what is their political destiny and future, and that would depend on a plebiscite in which they would be asked, rather than Pakistan imposing a solution or India imposing a solution. And how on earth all these democratic powers, someone big, someone mid-sized, someone small, but all claiming to be Democrat, deny this basic democratic exercise to the Kashmiri people? I mean, I'm astonished. How could we do that? Well, you can postpone this. You can postpone this. I would even refer it to the Middle East and Kashmir both, to a year, 2 decade, 4, 5, 10, 20, 3 centuries, 5 centuries, but it has to be addressed. The nations, they have patience. The nations with a sense of history, they can outlive any sort of colonization. And they know how to survive and outlive those colonization. It has been taught to all of us in the lessons of history. Otherwise, with distinct identity, these nations, these groups wouldn't have survived for generations. There are multiple examples where people have been colonized for even centuries. But eventually that colonization does receives its own part of challenge. And that challenge does get some sort of conclusion. We, on the other side, on the western border, I hope that the governance challenges in Afghanistan, the recent transformation gets settled, because it is pivotal for us as far as our connectivity with the Central Asia is concerned. And this is a wholesome region. And this region has historical connectivity, socially, culturally, with one another. I was on a recent visit to Uzbekistan, and I discovered there are around 3,000 plus words of Uzbek language in Urdu. I do not see that kind of amalgamation with Sanskrit or with other probably South Indian languages. But there are languages of Central Asia, be it Turkmen, Tajik, Uzbeki, and others, which has deep impact on our language, on our culture, on our poetry, on our storytelling, the way people dance, the way they celebrate their folk music, so on and so forth. You do see that identification and commonality with these people. And then there is a huge economic potential in terms of energy, in terms of human services interacting with each other, and offering itself as a manufacturing hub to the outside world, to the Eastern Europe, to the Western Europe, to the rest of Asia. Does Pakistan want that India should be excluded from all this story? Not at all. Not at all. We do see the opportunity and benefit of having trade and connectivity on the eastern side as well. But for that, in order to realize, Pakistan does feel that every individual and nation has to interact in a dignified way. You can't beg to have trade with someone. Begging is not an option, and we definitely will not. Trade and economic activity has to be done through mutual benefit. India is a large economy, it is with a huge population, but if it wants to transform itself into a growth rate between 8 to 10, it has to ensure that it receives unsustainable cheap supply of energy. Until and unless it is not there, I don't think so those lofty economic indicators can be attained. And this region, this corridor, is one way, one option of ensuring to supply that energy supply, unsustainable energy supply to them. We are quite ready, we are quite open to such ideas. But if the other side is going through a disease of hubris, and hubris is a kind of a disease which has been there all along with different individuals, corporate sectors, countries, and everywhere, anywhere, it has come with a single result. Yet to see an exception, and that result is failure. No might, doesn't matter how big you are in size, how mighty you are in militarily or economically, if you are experiencing hubris, the certain recipe is disaster. I'm not trying to be a history teacher over here, but anyone interested to examine this statement can go through the books of history and find it for themselves. So if the neighborhood is going through that, I do not see that it could be converted into an economic opportunity which would be mutually beneficial for the whole of the region. We are quite happy that they are having a good trade relations with China, despite their border disputes, despite their differences over the outlook of the world. But they are still doing trade. Pakistan has not shied away from that. Yes, we will examine, we will look into it, that what sort of a trade is beneficial for us. It would not be free for all, it would be a conscious decision. It is our right to examine our own interests, it's their right to examine their own interest and have a framework, if it comes to that, of having good economic relations with one another. But for that, we do need to speak out about the conflicts which exist between us. Until and unless we do not address that, Pakistan feels that having normal relations with the current regime would be very challenging. I won't call it impossible, but it's very challenging. The politics of Hindutva is another challenge. people are very much interested in the radical views of Al-Qaeda and Daesh and other Islamic radical entities. But I am surprised that how do they choose to ignore the politics of Hindutva, which primarily is altogether different to the religion of Hinduism. We don't have any issue with the religion of Hinduism. Pakistan has its own minority of Hindus, more or less more than 20% in the province of Sindh, and a very promising and committed minority who contributes culturally, socially, economically to the province of Sindh and overall to Pakistan. Hindu amongst the Sikhs are one of the most beautiful, along with Christians, are a minority which cherishes its security, prosperity, and shares a common destiny with the rest of Pakistanis. If you go to the interior of Sindh, Seeti is a word dedicated to identify Hindu commercial class. And they are socially well entrenched, they are politically well entrenched, they are economically well entrenched. So we don't have any issue with the religion of Hinduism. It's the idea of Hindutva which pronounces itself and targets specially and specifically two major monotheist religions, and that is Islam and Christianity. And according to them, a few centuries back, some outsiders came and they converted the indigenous population to the following of Islam and Christianity, and they have to be reverted back if they have got any right to exist as a citizenry. And they have legislated for that account by the name of Ghar Wapsi movement. And at the same time, while they are targeting these minorities at home, the wings of the RSS on the Western Hemisphere, to me, they are just like sleeper cells. Whatever happened in Canada is a very initial expression of these challenging and dangerous political ideas. And don't forget, there is a sizable population of this following from the European capital to all the important American capitals. How they would influence the political systems of these respective countries, how they will skew their policies, how they would influence that, is a matter of concern more of them rather than us. But Pakistan is experimenting from this jingoistic and Machiavellian ideas, political ideas, which requires a large and broad understanding to contain this challenge to the global order. And in my opinion, it is a challenge to the global order. Not immediately, but in the coming decades. I will conclude here on the general outlook of the security by just commenting last few lines on our domestic security. Pakistan does have a challenge from the non-state actors within, which we are fully realizing, preparing to respond to this challenge, be it in the religious-inspired violence or ethnic-inspired violence in the province of Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, particularly and generally to the rest of Pakistan. We raise our own taxes. We have our own security capability to respond to that. We don't have to rely on the outside security apparatus to take on these challenges. We don't need any tangible and practical support from the outside world Well, the coordination and the cooperation on different multilateral forums, I'm not denying that, but in terms of, I'm referring more of a failed or a dysfunctional state, which does require a security apparatus from the outside to take on such challenges. Thank God that is not the case in Pakistan. Pakistan is very much confident, self-reliant, who can take on these challenges. Yes, we have political dissents on these views. There is political polarization in the country where I again would feel it is also very healthy that people do take different perspective on these issues, on the genesis of it, on the conclusion of it, and how to approach about it. But at the end of the day, the state apparatus is very much in place. No matter who runs the government, he or she can rely on the same apparatus who can take on all these challenges, which is a good news. Economically, I just hinted, Pakistan, along with the mineral potential of the Balochistan province and some in the KP and Gilgit-Baltistan also, has got this huge potential where it can have that historical big push, which the economic philosopher or historian would call it. We are waiting for that big push of ours. Once it gets it, it will go towards the transformation of modernization of its society and infrastructure, which has a lot of opportunity and challenges, of course, both. I will conclude here and probably would allocate some time to Q&A and have more of interactive session from here on. Thank you. Thank you so much.
पॉलिसी रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट के ज़रिए तमाम मरगला डायलॉग की तकरीब हुई है, जिसे वज़ीर-ए-आज़म अनवर हक काकड़ ने खिताब किया है। उन्होंने कहा कि तरक्की के लिए बुनियादी ढांचे की तामीर वक्त की अहम ज़रूरत है। जदीद दौर में पेश आने वाले चैलेंजेस से निमटना होगा। पॉलिसी मेकिंग से मुतालिक बहुत से चैलेंज का सामना है हमें, जिस पर काम करने की ज़रूरत है।